Imagine a tiny South American nation, smaller than Idaho, tucked between Venezuela and Brazil, that was once one of the poorest countries in the hemisphere. A place where sugarcane fields and bauxite mines defined the economy, and dreams of prosperity seemed as distant as the stars. Now, imagine that same country growing its economy by 43% in a single year. Not over a decade, not even over 5 years. One single year. This isn't some economist's fantasy projection. This is Guyana, a small South American nation that went from being one of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere to having one of the highest GDP per capita growth rates in human history. In less than a decade, Guyana transformed from an economic afterthought into what some are calling the fastest growing economy on planet Earth. Guyana's story starts long before the oil rigs dotted its coast. Colonized by the Dutch, then the British, it gained independence in 1966 amid ethnic tensions between Afro-Guyanese and Indo-Guyanese communities. For decades, the economy chugged along on agriculture, sugar, rice, and gold mining supplemented by bauxite exports. By the early 2010s, Guyana's GDP hovered around $3 billion, with per capita income under $4,000. Poverty gripped over 40% of the population, unemployment was rampant, and brain drain saw 2 in 5 Guyanese-born people living abroad, chasing better lives in the US, Canada, or the UK. On May 20th, 2015, a single announcement from ExxonMobil would forever alter Guyana's trajectory. The oil giant had struck black gold in the Liza-1 well, encountering more than 295 feet of high-quality oil-bearing sandstone reservoirs 190 kilometers offshore. When ExxonMobil first approached the Stabroek Block, most of the oil industry had written off the region. Companies had drilled more than 40 dry holes in the area over the decades. Even Chevron had turned down the opportunity to invest, along with many other major oil producers. The target formation was under a mile of water, and drilling would cost at least $175 million. But when that gamble paid off, it paid off spectacularly. By 2025, the Stabroek Block will have yielded over 11 billion barrels of oil equivalent in recoverable resources, one of the largest oil discoveries globally in the past decade. To put this in perspective, that is enough oil to supply the entire world's daily consumption for about 4 months, all controlled by a country smaller than Idaho. In 2020, Guyana's GDP per capita was $6,963. By 2023, just 3 years later, it had skyrocketed to $20,626, nearly triple in 36 months. The International Monetary Fund reported that Guyana recorded the world's highest real GDP growth rate between 2020 and 2024, averaging an astonishing 47% per year. By 2025, projections showed Guyana's per capita GDP at purchasing power parity reaching $94,260. To understand what this means, Guyana's average citizen was projected to have purchasing power comparable to people in Qatar, Singapore, and Luxembourg, some of the wealthiest nations on Earth. Money alone doesn't transform a nation. What matters is what you do with it. And this is where Guyana's story becomes a masterclass in development economics with both tremendous successes and cautionary tales. Walk through Georgetown, Guyana's capital, today, and you'll see construction cranes dominating the skyline. The Guyanese government launched an ambitious infrastructure program that would have seemed impossible just a decade ago. Roads that were once rutted dirt paths are being paved. The country is investing billions in highway construction, connecting remote interior regions to the coast for the first time. New bridges are spanning rivers that once required ferry crossings. The Demerara River Bridge project, a massive undertaking, promises to revolutionize transportation in the region. The housing sector has exploded. New developments are rising across the country. The government launched initiatives to build thousands of homes, addressing decades of housing shortages. Young Guyanese who could only dream of home ownership are now finding it within reach. Guyana is investing in a massive gas-to-energy project that will convert natural gas from offshore fields into electricity. The goal? Slash electricity costs by 50% while providing stable, reliable power across the nation. For a country that once suffered frequent blackouts, this represents a revolution in quality of life. New schools are being built, hospitals are being modernized and expanded. The University of Guyana is undergoing significant expansion. Scholarships are being offered to thousands of students, creating opportunities that previous generations could never access. Yet this miracle isn't without shadows. As we peel back the layers, intriguing challenges emerge that could derail the dream. First, the resource curse is a phenomenon where oil-rich nations suffer inflation, corruption, and neglected non-oil sectors. In Guyana, the cost of living has skyrocketed. Rents in Georgetown doubled between 2020 and 2025, and food prices rose 20% last year. Inequality persists. While oil executives earn six figures, sugarcane farmers struggle as Dutch disease weakens agriculture. Exports of rice and sugar fell 15% in 2024 as the currency strengthened, making them less competitive. The relationship between Guyana and ExxonMobil lies at the heart of this transformation, but it's also the source of significant controversy. The 2016 production sharing agreement gives ExxonMobil the right to recover up to 75% of monthly gross revenue for development and operating expenses, with the remaining amount split equally between the government and the oil consortium. This means Guyana receives just 12.5% of oil revenues, plus a 2% royalty rate. Critics argue this is far below international standards. Brazil's royalty rates can reach 15%, and the US recently updated its royalty rate to over 16%. Yet, even with these unfavorable terms, the sheer volume of oil has made Guyana wealthy. ExxonMobil has made over 30 discoveries in the Stabroek Block since 2015. By 2030, ExxonMobil expects total production capacity to reach 1.7 million barrels daily from 8 projects. For a nation of 800,000 people, this represents an almost incomprehensible level of per capita oil production. The Guyana Economic Miracle represents one of the most dramatic national transformations in modern history. From a poverty-stricken former colony dependent on sugar and gold to the fastest-growing economy in the world, Guyana has rewritten the playbook on economic development. Yet, perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Guyana's story isn't just the wealth creation, it's the opportunity to use that wealth wisely. As President Ali noted, oil revenues must drive social equity and sustainable development. The true measure of the Guyana economic miracle won't be the GDP statistics or production numbers, but whether this extraordinary windfall creates lasting prosperity for all Guyanese people. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe.